Hi, and welcome back to another episode of T2W Garage. So today I'm going to be working on my 2001 Ford F250 with a 7.3 Power Stroke diesel in it. The issue was I was driving it the other day and in a parking lot, thankfully, I went to make a turn and I felt the steering wheel kick and felt like I had run over something, but I knew I had not, and then I lost my power steering. In addition, I also lost my brakes, power brakes also. That indicates that I broke the pressure line coming from the power steering pump, which also drives the master cylinder, which would explain why you lose steering as well as the brakes. So first of all, I was thankful that I wasn't going down a mountain road and that I was in a parking lot, so that made it much safer. So we're going to dive into this today, find out what went wrong, and replace any lines that are broken. Okay, so looking in from the top of the hood, and I realize this may be difficult to see, but it was very wet down in this lower portion, down by the pump. The high pressure line runs from there up to the back of the master cylinder. So to get to that, I need to remove this air intake valve or air intake pipe, as well as the turbo pipe here, and then we'll get that out. Then we'll be able to see better what we're doing. Okay, so with that out of there, as you can see, trying to get out of the sunlight, we have a much clearer access to that line. So following the high pressure line coming out of the master cylinder, you can see it comes down, curves, and comes in right here. So you can see right here, this high pressure line is loose. That's my problem, definitely. And that just comes right out with my hand. So that blew out, causing me to lose all of my pressure to both my brakes and my power steering. And believe me, that's bad news. So we definitely just need to replace this high pressure hose line. So first of all, I'm going to need to remove this nut here, back that fitting out. There we go. Not too bad. I didn't have to get a breaker bar, so I'm going to back that guy out of there. So that's out. I have to break it loose and get it off of the master cylinder up here. That return hose is kind of in the way. I'm going to pull it over to the side. Okay, so readjusted the camera so you can hopefully see a little better. But this is that high pressure line coming in up here, and it attaches right back here with that 18 millimeter fitting. So what I'm going to try to do is get in here. Okay, stop right here. I later found out that you do not want to remove the fitting from here. You actually want to remove it here. You can leave that elbow that goes into the Hydro Boost in place along with the bracket. I discovered that when I got the new hose and realized that it only came to this point. So there was no need to remove this back section. I'll show you that detail later. All right, so that's the culprit, this end anyway, that broke off. So this is the pressure line, as it's called. So I'm going to go down to my auto parts store. I've already checked their website. They have one of these in stock. So I'm going to go ahead. I just want to make sure this was the problem before I went and bought one. But now that I know, I'm going to run down and pick up a new line, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that's the original line, the Hydro Boost line that came off of it. I went down to my local auto parts dealer and picked up a replacement line for it. These came from Advanced Auto. I also picked up the other hydro line. I want to point out that the other line, you saw me when I took it off of the behind the hydro boost, or behind the master cylinder. I took this bracket off, and I figured out I did not need to do that because there's a connector here, and the new line just has this section. So if you do this, you can just leave this connector into the hydro boost with this bracket and just unattach it right here, and that's all that needs to be removed. So I'm going to put this back on, and then we'll go ahead and install the other lines. The line that I'm originally replacing is the one that goes from the pump to the hydro boost, which is behind the master cylinder. And then I'm also going to be replacing the other pressure line that comes from here down to the gearbox. So this is the other one that will run from here down. So it looks like that bend is correct, and then it makes a bend and goes down into the gearbox. So that's this correct hose here, 35279 or the 80421. So we'll set that aside for right now. All right, trying to give you a better angle here to see, but the second line comes from up here down and goes into the drive, or the gearbox as most people call it, down here. So that's also a high pressure line. I'm going to go ahead and replace that one as well. I want to avoid any future failures if at all possible. See what? These things laying out in the sun, these metal fittings are getting hot, hot, hot. So this line is going to come in here and attach and then run down here. I always like to kind of pre-check to make sure it's gonna fit. And that one looks like it will. Okay, so down here at the bottom, looks like it's a 5/8 on that connector, or that nut that goes on this other pressure line. And it is tight, so it's a bit of a challenge to get in here with a wrench. I'm pushing this line over out of the way to give me a little more room. So I know it's more of a pain to go ahead and replace all these lines, but I'll feel better knowing that all those old lines, the steering are replaced. And for what they cost as an aftermarket price, it's not bad, so it's not worth, or it's worth it to go ahead and change. There we go. So coming in from under the pump gives you a little more room to get a turn on this thing. But you don't get much. You get about a quarter of a turn at best. It's tedious. Alright, so I'm able to loosen the rest of the way by hand, finally. Pull it up. Now I figure this thing's probably going to spew a little bit, but nope, I guess the system is pretty well dry. Alright, so that end's loose. There we go. So now I'm going to try to, whether it's better to pull it up and out, or I'm going to let this side drop down and then pull it out the bottom, like so. And then here we got that line out now. Alright, so I'm going to put that bottom one on first, which is this line here. And I'm going to just put it in reverse, so I'm going to fish it up from the bottom. I'll tell you what, it is a hot day today in North Carolina. It has gotten warm quick. Even for here in the mountains, it's pretty warm. Alright, so get in here, do my contortionist act. Put this line up. Okay, so I'm not going to tighten that down tight. I just have it slightly snugged up. And I want to get this bottom side started down here going into the gearbox. Get that as tight as I can down there. Good and snug. Come back up here now, and I just, in case I needed to twist it or rotate it, I didn't want to tighten this top side down too tight. Alright, so it's good and snug there. Alright, so that pressure line is in now. So that's a new pressure line going down to the gearbox, or to the drive. Now I'm going to be replacing the one that goes from this fitting here on the pump up to the Hydro Boost, as Ford calls it. So like before, I'm going to fish this down underneath that ignition, the electrical lines. Actually, it needs to go right underneath the line I just put in, it looks like. Then come up to get the right angle. There we go. It's got this offset to clear that other pressure line that we just installed. It's an awkward angle, which is why you want to start it by hand. There we go. I can feel the threads taking hold now. I'm going to go ahead and attach the top side here. You want to make sure you have this little nylon washer that's on here, because that serves as your crush washer, your seal. So if for any reason you get these from the store, just make sure that you've got those on. There we go. So those threads have taken hold. Let's go ahead, still use our 18 millimeter. Tighten that up. Try to do this so that my arm is not blocking the camera. Monkey wrench, all size, or whatever you want to call it. And so that I can keep that from twisting. Okay, so that's tight. And then we can come down here to this bottom connection right here that's going into the pump, and let's tighten that, which is also the same 18 millimeter. Okay, so there we go. Just like that, we have the two pressure lines replaced. Just check my lines, make sure they're not rubbing against anything. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect my turbo intercooler tube, the breather, and then put the battery back in. That's just the reverse of what you saw me take off before. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that back in, then I'll cut back. Okay, so it's all back together, and I've taken it for a test drive. But before I did that, obviously I had lost a lot of fluid in the power steering pump, so I needed to refill that. Now, in case you didn't know it, these trucks use automatic transmission fluid in the power steering system. They do not use power steering fluid. It's recommended by Ford for whatever reason, but just wanted to point that out. So I got some clean, new ATF fluid, put it in the power steering pump, filled it up, and then I started the truck and let it run to cycle it through the system. It took doing that about 3 times to get the system full again. Now, unlike brakes where you have to bleed the system, you do not have to bleed these systems. They are not a closed loop system. They are open, so they will purge any air out of the system on their own. So anyway, I filled the pump up, I ran it, and then the first time I couldn't really turn the steering wheel still, but my brakes came back. Then stopped it, refilled the reservoir on the pump, and ran it again. And then at that point I was getting to where I could start to move the steering wheel back and forth, so I'd cycle the wheels back and forth, apply the brake. And then the third time when I filled it up, it seemed to stay full. It took a little less than a quart to do all this. And then at that point, I took it for a test drive and then brought it home, got it nice and hot, and then I checked all the connections for leaks. Fortunately, there were none. So it's fixed. I'm happy. I went ahead and replaced both of those pressure lines, again, to avoid any failure on the second one in the future. So now I know I've got 2 brand new pressure lines on there. So I hope this video was helpful for you to be able to see how to find the problem and replace those lines. I personally had not seen another video that got into it on this truck. But again, this one had the Hydro Boost system on it. It's a 7.3 power stroke 2001 model. So this is Tim Two Wheels. Thank you so much for watching.